Today I'm going to tell you about the Morpheus API Gateway, which is an easy ingress into the Morpheus compute node. It provides a way for users to access the Morpheus marketplace and the Morpheus compute ecosystem with just an API key and the Morpheus API base URL. Right now, the way to access the Morpheus compute ecosystem is by downloading and running the proxy router or by downloading the desktop UI. We've seen that it's just a little bit heavy for some users, and a lot of users would prefer to access the marketplace through their API key and base URL, just like they do with other platforms. So that's what we created here. Now, within this gateway, you're looking at our Swagger UI right now, which is really the first step towards launching. We're also in the process of bringing out an API docs page with an explanation on all of the endpoints. It has a playground where you can go in and execute functions similarly to how you would do here, but just in a way more user-friendly manner. So keep an eye out for that, and it should be out soon. But we'll walk through how you use this right now. The first thing we're going to do is register within the gateway. So we'll click the API v1 auth register endpoint. Let's say video 0 as our email. We'll just put in an email password here. We'll execute that. For all of these, you're going to see the curl that you can use to put this in through your terminal or through your program, however you decide to do it. You can see this was successful with video 0 coming in as the username and being active is true. So next one we'll do is log in, and logging in is an important function here just to maintain the differentiation and security between users. This is going to give you an authentication key once we complete our login. Let's just type in our username and password. And you'll see when we execute, we get this auth key. So let's copy the auth key. And then we're going to move down to actually create our API key. So we'll go to the API v1 auth keys endpoint. We'll click this little lock button here, enter our token, and then name the key, which we'll just say video. We'll execute that and see that the API key popped out. So this is really important to copy down the API key here because you're not going to be able to get the full key later. And I'll show you that right now through the get API keys function, where when we run that, you can see the API key that we created, but it only gives you the prefix. So you know which one it is, but you can't access the full key. And this is, of course, for user security. So we have our API key. We know our base URL, of course, which is in these curl commands. Next thing we're going to do is enable our automation. And the automation is something pretty unique to this API gateway. Traditionally, when you're using the proxy router, the way that it works is you create a session with a provider. And what that means is you are more or less renting their hardware for a predetermined amount of time that you're setting. You can send as many prompts back and forth as you want, but you're creating that session with them. It's a little burdensome to go in and create your session for the particular model. If you want to switch a model, you have to close the session and reopen. It's just a lot of steps that need to happen. By using the automation functionality, we're abstracting all of that and handling it all on the back end. So we're creating the session, we're managing the session, and closing the session when it's done. And actually, before I set the automation, I'll just show you what these sessions look like. So for create bid session, you're finding a specific bid, which is a specific provider model pair. You can create that session directly with that provider, or you can create a session by model, which is looking at a particular model that's being hosted and identifying the highest rated provider. And that's really where we're pointing through with the automation functionality. It's finding the best provider for the model and it's connecting you. So when we go and configure that automation, we're going to first enter our API key here, which we just copied. We're going to set is enabled equals true, and then we're going to choose a session duration. So I chose a very small one here just for testing purposes, but that session duration is going to play a big role where a short session duration might save you some cost by, closing that session when early, or not holding on to it as long as you need. But it also gives you a problem where you have to spend a couple seconds for the session to be created after you send a chat. And depending on your program, you could get timeouts or whatnot. So if you're using this frequently, if you're using this within your program, we recommend having at least a day. We max it at a week, and we've seen a lot of user feedback that keeping long open sessions will provide the best results for them, of course, for quick inference and immediate access when they need it. So we're just going to execute this. We're going to see that is enabled equals true and our session duration that we just set. So the next part here is that we can just go directly to chat, but I want to show you the models first. So we'll go to the API v1 models endpoint, which is OpenAI API compatible. It's the same endpoint that everyone uses, and we'll just execute that. This list that gets outputted here is all of the models available within the marketplace, all from different providers, or some providers are hosting multiple models, but we'll take a look at these bottom three just for now for testing purposes. Now, we implemented something in here that really abstracts another layer of difficulty that users are having. So you see these models are available. We all know that new models are coming out every week or every month. And it's difficult when you specify in your program for a specific model and then that model changes. So we implemented something that we're calling tags. They're represented a couple different ways here, but a model is going to have a tag, whether that's default, whether that's text, image, code, agent, a bunch of different categories that we're going to post in our docs that you can just call the model as default, and you will automatically be pointed to what that default model is determined. So let's say you had Llama 3.23b as the model you wanted to use, and that gets deprecated for 3.37db, your program would fail. But if 3.23b was the default, and we move that default tag to 3.37db, you would automatically just be getting the 7db model when you sent that chat request. So it really just helps from the user standpoint, and depending on your application. Of course, you could still choose a model directly by the name if you'd like, which I'm going to show you right now. So we'll go down to the chat completions endpoint. We'll throw in the model name here. I actually need to go grab that API key, which of course you should copy this down on another page, but we'll throw that in here. And then this is, again, OpenAI API standard format. So everyone knows what this is. Everyone knows how this works. You have your system message, you have your user message, and then you just append your context here. We have a bunch more settings that are available, which will be described in the additional documentation that we have. So let's just send this chat request to 3.37db. You can either use the name or the model ID. We look up both on the backend database. So now you'll see this is loading. This is actually creating a session right now, and you'll see that it succeeded. So it created a session, it sent a chat to the session. We'll see it delivered with Llama 3.37db and said, "Hello, I'm doing well, thank you for asking. I'm a computer," if we didn't know. So now we want to see what happens when we choose a different model. Is it able to close that session? Is it able to reconfigure this for us? And we'll just show that with default. I'm going to kill two birds with one stone here. So let's execute this. Right now it's closing the session, it's finding a provider for the new session based on the model ID, and it's executing that to create the new session for us. And we'll see right here, model Mistral 3124B, which we saw earlier in the model's configuration that was the default model, and came through again. "Hello, I'm here and ready to assist you." So it really shows that this automation functionality works. The chat completions endpoint is working properly as expected, and this API gateway is really providing that interface between a user and an easy way to access the Morpheus compute ecosystem. So keep an eye out. We're going to have a bunch more videos. We're going to have a bunch more documentation, and we'll show all the different types of integrations that you can do, whether you want to plug this into Cursor, to Brave, to a web UI, whatever you prefer. It's going to work the same as everything else. You're just going to catch that base URL, which you see here in your API key, and you'll be ready to roll. Thanks, guys.